Welcome, and thank you for joining us for this Flinders University Brave mini lecture series event titled Braving COVID, where we will explore the effect COVID is having on that most important of activities, sleep. I'm Karen Ashford and I'm delighted to be your MC today. Above all else, we'd like to acknowledge that we're hosting this forum on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people and that we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge and convey our deep appreciation to all the elders of all the nations upon which Flinders operates. Today's event is delivered as part of our Brave lecture series, so named because through this series we showcase our researchers who challenge the status quo and bravely investigate with a view to resolve some of the big societal challenges of our time. This on-live Brave mini-series aims to instil information and inspiration in rapidly changing, challenging times. A reminder that if you can't stay for the duration of the live stream, you can watch our recording later via our website, flinders.edu.au. As always, we're keen to make this an interactive event with a live Q&A session. It's your chance to participate in the discussion and to pose questions to the speakers in real time. We do ask, however, that everyone please treat this forum as a place of respectful engagement, where people are treated with dignity and where differing views are tolerated. We're ready to start receiving questions now via the message function on this platform, or you can join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #BraveResearch. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you today's expert speaker, Professor Danny Eckert. Our Matthew Flinders Distinguished Professor Danny Eckert is the Director of the Adelaide Institute for Sleep Health and Deputy Director of Flinders Health and Medical Research Institute in the College of Medicine and Public Health. He leads a team of renowned researchers and clinicians focused on the identification, management, treatment and prevention of sleep disorders. Professor Eckert holds a number of appointments, including as a Senior Research Fellow with the National Health and Medical Research Council, and he was recently awarded the highly prestigious FHMRI Investigator Grant. I'd like to invite Professor Danny Eckert to deliver today's mini lecture titled Braving COVID, Improving Health and Wellbeing Through the Science of Sleep. Over to you, Danny.
Well, many thanks, Karen, and welcome to our listeners. Thank you for joining today. And yeah, I think this is very timely. We've all been through this rather turbulent week last week, and you know, it certainly affected our lives in different ways, and sleep, I'm sure, has been a big part of that for many. So what I'll be running through today is various aspects on sleep health that I hope you'll find insightful and useful. But before I launch into the content, I want to thank and acknowledge this incredible group of people here, the sleep health team at Flinders, all of whom are indeed dedicated to figuring out why people get sleep disorders and coming up with new therapies. So here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to run through a few sleep facts and myths, and then I'm going to talk about causes and consequences of inadequate sleep, and with relevance to the current situation, and in particular provide some tips and resources to improve sleep health and well-being overall. So this is sort of a fundamental philosophical question, if you like. Why do we sleep? And as we learn more about the science of sleep, this list continues to grow, and we have all these sorts of ideas and reasons to save energy, dark is dangerous, our bodies to recover from the day's activities, clean out the central nervous system, restore energy supplies, create and strengthen neural connections in the brain, consolidate memories. Certain hormones, such as growth hormone, are only released in deep sleep, or certainly predominantly, and this list continues to grow. But in practical terms, we sleep every night because we get tired, and we need it. We know that without it, we're in trouble, and things really don't function well. But it is a fascinating thing, and this idea that we sort of go off to sleep and we're kind of comatose and we wake up the next day and you know, with the system sort of gone offline, if you like, is sort of fundamentally incorrect, and we now know that. And here's examples in dolphins' brains and certainly sea lions and other mammals, where they've adapted and evolved to have this incredible ability where half their brain can sleep whilst the other half stays completely awake. So they can navigate their environment and look out for predators and things with one half, but while still getting all those restorative benefits with the other half of the brain. And it turns out the more we learn about humans, the brain, the cortex, doesn't all sleep in synchrony. It turns out we can get local areas of sleep and certain areas of the brain actually go off to sleep much earlier than other areas of the brain. So I'm going to start by posing this question to the audience with that background. How many times per hour do you think a healthy 40-year-old wakes up during sleep? A, 0, B, 1 to 5, C, 5 to 10, D, 10 to 15, or E, more than 15 times per hour. So just have a little think about that, and then I'll show you the answer. So here is the answer. On the bottom here we have age, and then the number of times people wake up per hour of sleep. Now granted, these are only very brief awakenings, less than 15 seconds each, or what we call the arousal index. And if you answered E, more than 15 times per hour, you'd be correct. On average, a healthy 40-year-old wakes up, roughly 20 times per hour. So it's actually quite a lot. Now, thankfully, we rarely remember these, but completely normal to wake up, 40 times or more per hour on average. Sorry, correction, 20 if you're a 40-year-old. So what is normal sleep? It's really a dynamic process in which the brain is incredibly active, particularly during those phases in blue on this graph, shown as rapid eye movement sleep, or what we often refer to as dreaming sleep. Now, as we learn more about the science of sleep, turns out we have dreamlike behaviour all throughout the night, but if we wake up from rapid eye movement sleep, we're much more likely to remember our dreams. But when we stick electrodes on the scalp of people and record their underlying electrical activity of the brain whilst they sleep, as shown here, if we look at these squiggly lines awake on top versus the ones when they're in rapid eye movement sleep, you can see they're very similar. And in fact, the only way we can distinguish between wakefulness and rapid eye movement sleep is because people's muscle tone is very relaxed when they're in rapid eye movement sleep, so they don't act out their dreams, and their eyes are flickering. But if we were just to look at the EEG, very, very similar, very active to the state, similar to that whilst we're awake. So there's just a few sleep facts. How much sleep are Australians getting is the next question, and ultimately, how much do we need to function optimally? Recognising, through times of stress like we've currently been in, it can be hard to get a good night's sleep. So again, I'm just going to ask people to think about how many hours per night do you typically sleep. So think about perhaps not the last week or prior to that, how many hours per night would be normal for you? Less than 5 hours, A, 5 to 6, B, 6 to 7, C, D, 7 to 8, E, 8 to 9, or greater than 9 hours per night for F. Now, it turns out, sleep affects pretty much every organ and pretty much every cell in the body. Here's obviously an incredibly important outcome, mortality. Turns out if you answered D, 7 to 8 hours per night, on average, these people who answered that question with D tended to live longer than those who answered in the other categories. And in particular, those who slept less than 5 hours a night tended to die prematurely, as did, interestingly, those who slept longer than 9 hours per night. So it's this U-shaped curve. So, food for thought. Of course, this is the last thing we need to tell people with insomnia. They already know about this, but many of us may be surprised to learn something as simple as getting enough sleep may be very important for longevity. This is certainly recognised, and here's a report from Deloitte that really showed that 4 out of 10 Australians have inadequate sleep, and this is financially costing the country in excess of $66 billion a year in 2017 alone. And on the back of these reports, there was a bipartisan national inquiry, parliamentary inquiry into sleep health awareness. Many of the team here at Flinders spoke as expert witnesses on this, and really acknowledging the scope and the impact that impaired sleep has on our lives, our productivity, and ultimately our health and well-being. So what keeps us from sleeping? Why aren't we getting enough? What is it with these 4 out of 10 Australians? So turns out over 1 million Australians have got sleep disorders, other health problems that affect our sleep, so things such as back pain or cancer or other comorbidities, 2.5 million. Others are routinely not getting enough sleep or are sleep deprived. Now that might be due to shift work, so it's nearly 4 million people, or lifestyle factors that prevent them from getting enough sleep routinely. As I mentioned, 17% of Australians are actually shift workers, so this is certainly a category that would fall into that area. Other factors, certainly in our big cities, less of an issue here in Adelaide. Everything's 20 minutes away, as I've learned. But in our big cities, the commuting time can cut into people's sleep time, having to get up early. When they get home, they want to spend time with family and loved ones, and that can cut into sleep time. These things, these addictive little things, we know are distracting us and taking us away from many things, but they also have the potential to impact our sleep. Caffeine. So when we, throughout the day, we build up adenosine in the central nervous system. Caffeine is an adenosine antagonist, so it turns off that sleep-promoting agent to make us more alert, but can make us, if we have too much of that, particularly later in the day, it can be hard to get off to sleep. Certainly, a lot going on in our minds in these busy 24-hour societies, switching off from work. And there still is, unfortunately, this notion that it's a marker of strength if you can get by not sleeping very much. This superhuman quality. We know as sleep researchers, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're not functioning well. Very, very rare do we see someone that's actually can get by with very little sleep and still function optimally. About 1 billion people on the planet now have this very common disorder, obstructive sleep apnea, associated with snoring, and a disorder that we study a lot in the lab here at Flinders, where the airway is actually closing off repetitively throughout the night. As you'd expect, this has lots of implications for health and well-being. People feel very tired during the day, and it affects the heart and cardiovascular system, among other crucial functions of the body. Huge health, financial, and safety consequences. This conservative estimate was $150 billion 5 years ago in the US alone of untreated obstructive sleep apnea. So how much do we need? So here are the recommendations from the National Sleep Foundation. Now, our sleep requirements do change throughout our lifespan. But on average, adults still need, roughly that 7 or 8 or 7 to 9 hours per sleep, even into older adulthood. Whereas obviously at younger stages, we require a lot of sleep. Teenagers are particularly bad at getting the recommended 8 to 10 hours a night. Recent reports suggest, less than 15% of teenagers are hitting that target, which is obviously a cause for concern, given the links with all sorts of other health challenges and consequences. So as I mentioned, sleep does change. This is sort of a representation of the architecture of sleep. As we get older, we tend to have a little less deeper sleep and more wake after sleep onset. So it does, it becomes normal to have more of these wakening periods that I sort of alluded to in the start as we get a bit older. Completely normal, but overall the structure stays, relatively the same throughout once we reach adulthood. So what are the causes and consequences of inadequate sleep? I've sort of alluded to some of these already. There are many. So what does it do in terms of our alertness on performance? And here's a question: how long can you stay awake until you start behaving as though you're intoxicated? Now, a lot of these studies have actually come out of Australia and here in Adelaide, in fact. And it turns out if you're awake for 19 hours in a row, you perform on an alertness task as though you have an equivalent blood alcohol concentration of 0.05, so legally intoxicated. If you're awake for a full 24 hours, you're now at 0.1. And there's other ways to get there. So chronically, if you restrict your sleep throughout the week to 4 or 5 hours a night, you're also at double the legal limit in terms of your performance. For young men out there, if you hold this regime of 5 hours a night and you measure your testosterone levels before and after just a week of restricting your sleep at that 4 or 5 hours a night, your testosterone levels are as though you've aged, over a decade. Again, when you're overtired or sleep deprived, the amygdala, which is very responsive for our sort of thinking processes and our decision making, is 60% more reactive, so you're much more likely to make these rash and moody type decisions, if you like. I mentioned shift workers earlier. 17% of Australians fit into this category. I could change this with sleep apnea or sleep disorder or inadequate sleep. Effectively, the point is every organ in your body is potentially adversely affected if you're not getting adequate sleep. What about our mental health and our well-being? So the direct short-term effects, and many of us would have experienced this, if we didn't get enough sleep, we're grumpy, we're having trouble concentrating, less creative, less productive, less resilient, just more unstable. Longer term, there is an increased risk with developing depression, anxiety disorders, suicidal behaviour, and it turns out that 80% of people with depression actually have insomnia. So this is, these two, sleep and mental health, are implicitly linked. And I guess the thing about the science behind that, so throughout the day we're doing a lot of things. Our central nervous system, our body is acquiring new knowledge and many tasks, and so every day, if you like, we're building up these dishes, or if we're at work, our desk is getting busier. This looks a little like my desk at the moment, and so we're filling the brain and the body system with all this information and data. And sleep, as it turns out, is like a garbage truck. If we get enough, and it's not disrupted by a sleep disorder or other sleep disruption, then the garbage truck comes every night, picks up the dishes, picks up the rubbish on our desk so that we can function optimally the next day. Now, if we're cutting into that sleep time, or we're getting, we have a sleep disorder or other sleep disruptions, every day we're leaving some dishes behind or some papers on the desk, and it's making it harder for us to do our daily function tasks the next day. So what can we do about this? How can we improve our sleep to improve our health and well-being? Well, 5 key tips. Maximize your sleep drive, and this is sort of a physiological aspect, and your body rhythms. You want to optimize your what we call your circadian rhythms. You want to minimize those internal disruptions to sleep, both the physical and mental. Minimize the external disruptions, noise, light, temperature, and so forth. And really, if you are someone that struggles to sleep, this idea of working towards developing a positive attitude towards sleep is really fundamental to improving sleep behaviour and sleep quality. I'll refer to the Sleep Foundation a lot, the Sleep Health Foundation, as it's an invaluable resource here, and it's really a great place to turn if you're seeking further information on a practical level. So this sleep drive, I alluded to it earlier. Throughout the day, all these neuromodulators build up in the central nervous system, adenosine being one of them, and caffeine turns that off. But this is basically, these things build up throughout the day and help us to naturally get off to sleep. Naps, therefore, are typically to be avoided if possible, unless you are a shift worker or you're on a long drive. They can be a great way, brief naps, to restore alertness. But otherwise, they can interfere with your ability to get off to sleep and your nighttime sleep. So You want to maximize your sleep drive, not to spend too long in bed. You want that sort of 7, 8, 9 hour opportunity, and limit your time in bed, and really only going to bed when you're sleepy. That can all help maximize that sort of sleep drive component. Looking after your body rhythm, or your body clock, if you like, is another. This is all regulated by light. So these systems, and melatonin is the hormone that's naturally released prior to sleep that helps us get off to sleep. Now, getting light in the morning and exercise and outdoor activity, and this is, I don't know about how folks in the audience felt, but this idea of 6 days without being able to go out and exercise was pretty distressing to me, and we know that that's hard for our sleep. So because we do need that light, and activity can certainly, and aerobic exercise helps us sleep deeper. That is if we don't get it just before going off to sleep in the night. So melatonin, I mentioned, becomes delayed with puberty. That's why many of our teenagers start to go to sleep later. There's a physiological basis for it. But the computer screens, the iPhones, these sort of smartphones and so forth, they emit this blue light, which actually suppresses the melatonin release. So there are things, the recommendation there is to, lock those devices up a couple of hours before going to bed. But if you do need to do something on your computer, there are these apps available, and some of the modern devices actually have screens where they can filter out a good proportion of that alerting light that would otherwise be suppressing the melatonin. So stay away from these things is really the recommendation in the lead up to sleep. Now, you want to minimise those internal disruptions. So if you think you might have a sleep disorder, sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, periodic LEM movements, the Australasian Sleep Association is a great resource, the peak body in Australia and New Zealand for sleep physicians and scientists, and again, an invaluable resource. So it's about having a conversation with your GP and seeking appropriate care if you think that this might be an issue for you. Minimising these internal disruptions is obviously another key part to this sleep thing we do every day. And it's really about, what can we do if we can't sleep because we're feeling stressed? So obviously very, very relevant in the current times. We as humans, we like predictability. We don't like these uncertain chopping, changing and things. So there's all sorts of reasons why we can have these stress, lifestyle, personal worries, so on and so forth. Now, again, the Sleep Health Foundation has actually got some great resources out on this, getting a good night's sleep during the COVID pandemic. And so this will be different for many of us. Some of us, we haven't had to travel so much, and so we haven't had to deal with jet lag and the disruptions around travel. And some of us might have actually got into quite a good sleep routine. Others, with the constantly changing situation, may have found it very difficult and stressful to get off to sleep. And I think there's many levels of advice that are provided in this, and I won't go through them all except to say this is one. If this is an issue that you're finding, getting off to sleep, stay away from these endless media feeds. As Jonathan Craig alluded to yesterday, find a check-in daily on reputable sites, the health advisory sites on the current situation. We need to stay informed, but try to avoid getting constant streams of information on it, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. Many more recommendations here, but the point just to say is that there are resources available and places to turn for advice and help to optimize sleep during this time, and I would certainly recommend having a look at these via the Sleep Health Foundation website. Other things on a regular basis that do work to actually help relieve stress and allow us to get off to sleep, sensible things, avoiding caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, these alerting things, or things that can disrupt our sleep, such as alcohol, prior to sleep. Some other sort of sound recommendations here, if you do your worrying, do it in one burst and then keep it away from that time when you're going off to sleep. These breathing exercises, mindfulness and so forth, as well as, of course, cognitive behavioural therapy for insomnia, are very effective in helping manage stress and improve sleep. and therefore well-being. Minimising these external disruptions, so you want to make sure that this sort of falls into the category of what we call sleep hygiene, making sure that the bedroom is dark, that the temperature is appropriate. You know, if you do have fears or concerns, low wattage light is a solution. This might be useful for children. Noisy partner, earplugs, or even better, recommend them to go see a sleep doctor and get their sleep disorder treated if it's snoring or sleep apnea. Pets, all these things, making sure that lifestyle factors or the bedroom is optimized for sleep. And finally, developing this positive attitude to sleep. Yes, sleep is a physiological thing that we do every day, but it's also a behavioural thing. So we want to create good routines that will help us get off to sleep. So, and I mentioned exercise is really good, getting that light in the morning, and focusing on good sleep habits rather than worrying about the potential impact of sleep loss. Easier said than done, I understand, but this is really the pathway to good, healthy sleep. And recognising, leaving that bedroom setting for sleep and intimacy, making sure you're not spending too long in your bed so that you're not building up bad behaviours and around being in bed and not sleeping. Try not to watch the clock, avoid these insomnia labels, and really, healthy sleep combined with exercise and diet really underpins good health, alertness, performance, well-being, and just really, the pathway to a happy, healthy life. So I've mentioned really those things that we need to do in terms of, it turns out 24 to 22 degrees is the optimal temperature for sleep. So I won't go over those again. Again, just alluding to all, there are many issues or reasons why our sleep may be interrupted. Here's many invaluable resources via the Sleep Health Foundation website. Harvard also has a great healthy sleep app or a website, I should say, and lots of resources there, as well as the Australasian Sleep Association. As do we. We're very fortunate here at Flinders to have a world-class, truly world-class team who are, undertaking lots of clinical research on sleep disorders and sleep health. And we now have a volunteers registry. So we're running currently over 20 different sleep studies. Some are on sleep apnea, some are on insomnia, and we're always looking for volunteers. So if you are interested in finding out further information or volunteering for one of our studies, you can go to our website and fill out a volunteer survey. It'll take about 5 or 10 minutes, and then you'll be on our register, and we can contact you for sleep. So that's for people who think they might have a sleep disorder, already know that they've got one, or even healthy individuals. We study in some of our sleep research as well. Summarising all those tips: stick to routines, taking care with food and drink prior to sleep. So obviously avoiding those big heavy meals immediately prior to sleep. Important to get this routine and the wind down and relaxation prior to sleep, turning down and lowering those lights prior to sleep so we can harness the body clock effects to help us get off to sleep and stay asleep. Make sure your bedroom's comfortable, dark, appropriate for sleeping, and avoid these watching the clock behaviours. So I might leave it there, Karen, and just finish by thanking once again the fantastic team that we have here at Flinders within the Sleep Health Group. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. That was absolutely fascinating and great analysis. Audience questions are flowing in, and please don't hesitate to send yours through too. We'll do our best to answer everyone, but this is intended to be a snapshot session, so we may not be able to get to all of them in the given time. We have about 15 minutes left, so we'll do our very best. If we don't get to your question, we'll post answers on our Brave webpage, and if you'd like a direct response, please leave your contact details. Now, to get the discussion started, the first question we have is, if someone contracts COVID, do we know if that might cause specific sleep issues, either during the disease or post-infection?
Look, really interesting question, and the evidence is emerging. Now, what we do know that there is this group post-COVID that feels very, very fatigued and does have ongoing fatigue issues. Now, whether this is related to their sleep or not, we don't have a good understanding on that at the moment, but all I would say is watch this space. Like everything in the COVID space, we're learning more every day, and the evidence base is building.
We've got a question here. It actually comes in two parts about lucid dreaming. Have there been any studies on the long-term benefits or detriment of lucid dreaming? And essentially, is it detrimental to sleep, or can it enhance your sleep experience?
Look, lucid dreaming is fascinating, actually. And as we've got better tools to monitor brain function, and so we now have these electrode arrays which will allow us to measure, over 256 different areas of the brain, and they've used these kind of techniques to learn, where the dreaming, for instance, is taking place in the brain. It turns out it happens towards the back of your brain throughout the night, and lucid dreaming. Actually, I've done it before. It's kind of cool. You recognise that you are, for those that aren't aware of what it is, you recognise that you're dreaming, and you kind of just go with it and do things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, have adventures and things. So it's being conscious that you're asleep, but sort of controlling your dreams in a way, if you like. So what do we know about it? A proportion of people are able to do it. It's something that some people can sort of train themselves to do it, it would seem. What are the implications for health and otherwise? We don't know, but it is an interesting aspect of sleep.
We have a question here from an anonymous audience member. Is there a link between high blood pressure and heart disease with sleep?
Look, there is, and in particular, obstructive sleep apnea. So if you have untreated sleep apnea, you are likely to be, you're much more likely to be hypertensive. So you can imagine that if you're not getting restorative, regenerative sleep, and your airways closing off again and again throughout the night, then that's placing stress on the heart and the cardiovascular system. Your oxygen levels are lower. Again, that's another stressor to the body. And so, yes, your blood pressure does go up. The other thing that happens during a good night of sleep is your blood pressure tends to go down. That's a sign of sort of healthy sleep. So throughout the night, your blood pressure goes down. It's all part of this restorative process. So yes, sleep apnea can make your blood pressure and the cardiovascular, all sorts of cardiovascular consequences, including stroke, much more likely, but also getting interrupted or inadequate sleep can also have, be a stressor on the cardiovascular system.
We had a question here from someone called Kerry. It's in two parts, and there's a bit of a statement followed by a question. Kerry writes, I've had insomnia going on 3 months. I've been to my GP 4 times. I've got sleep aids, melatonin, exercise. I'm losing weight. Been trying chamomile. I've stopped caffeine. Nothing is working, and I'm getting despondent. The question is, does CBTI work, so cognitive behavioural therapy? Is that likely to be effective in a case like this? Noting, of course, that we can't give clinical advice in a public forum.
Yeah, look, what the evidence shows is, and our team is dedicated to helping people like Kerry, and we do have the insomnia treatment program, and really the evidence shows us that cognitive behavioural therapy works better than medicines to sleeping hypnotic drugs to resolve insomnia in the long term. So yes, it takes work in that you've got to do these sessions, but the evidence is overwhelming. Yes, that is the preferred and recommended way to get rid of insomnia as CBTI.
Danny, it might also be worth following up, because you did mention that there is the opportunity for people to be involved in trials. Is that something that someone who's experiencing sleep difficulties should consider, or are those trials aimed at people who don't have those sleep difficulties and, to give a baseload level? So can you explain the sort of people that you're looking for trials down at the Sleep Institute?
Yeah, look, thanks, Karen. It varies depending, but as I mentioned, at any given time we're running between 15 to 20 or more sleep studies. We have a 6-bed sleep research facility here, and we're asking all sorts of questions around sleep health. So It doesn't really matter what your sleep is like. If you're interested in participating, I would encourage you to log on to our website and fill out the brief questionnaires and surveys that will give us a snapshot of your sleep health. And if there's anything that we're running at the moment in which you may be eligible, the team will reach out to you and invite you to participate. Of course, that if there's nothing eligible for your particular sleep issues at the time, we can keep you on the registry and reach out down the track when other studies that might be more appropriate commence.
We have another anonymous question, and this one's pretty straightforward. Is reading a book on my iPhone okay?
Yeah, look. I talked about the melatonin suppressing effects that blue light. Now, it turns out things, when you're up close in your face, these devices are actually worse than TV that's further away. Now, we don't recommend television in the bedroom from a sleep hygiene point of view. Having said that, some people can read a device and it doesn't affect their sleep. They've got their routine and their pattern, and they are getting enough sleep, they're sleeping just fine. In those people, yes, if reading on the iPhone or the iPad is not disrupting your sleep, you don't have any issues, then that's okay. But if you are someone that's experiencing difficulty and it is affecting your daytime function, then we wouldn't be recommending using those devices in those 1 or 2 hours prior to sleep. And like I mentioned during the talk, if you are experiencing trouble sleeping, best not to read in bed. Do it elsewhere, get tired, go to bed, and so you're just associating that bedroom with sleep, basically.
We have another anonymous question here, and it is, what advice could you provide to people in hotel quarantine or home isolation for maintaining sleep schedules when you're not able to go outside?
Yeah, look, good one. And I've got family in quarantine at the moment in Sydney, and particularly the hotels where you can't get outside and get that fresh air in. But what you can do is you can open up the blinds every day and get that light in, and so you can harness those effects. I know people they're doing routines of walking around the thing, so they're getting exercise and they're doing they might be doing exercise in the room, whatever whether it be yoga or exercise class or whatever. So those sorts of things can all help maintain a regular pattern and routine in what is a very otherwise unnatural circumstance.
We have a really interesting question here from another anonymous scribe. How do you know if you have sleep apnea, if you have apnea? That's a great question because not everybody sleeps with a partner who will tell you that you have this condition. So how do you self-diagnose? How do you know if you've got apnea?
Yeah, look, good question. And yes, many people will first raise it with their doctor because of a bed partner. Now, if that is not the case, the signs might be that you're waking up with a headache in the morning. You might be waking up after getting enough duration of sleep, but you're feeling unrefreshed. You may have noticed yourself sort of choking or gasping for air throughout the night, or when you're dozing off to sleep, or you might have woken yourself up from snoring. You might be groggy during the day, so feeling sleepy. You might have had a near miss episode in your car, or an alertness failure, or accident at work, and just not feeling like you feeling tired is another one throughout the day. So there's some of the other signs that or symptoms, if you like, that might be a trigger to start a conversation with your GP around your sleep.
Follow-up question to that, is it dangerous? Is apnea dangerous due to the loss of sleep, or does it have other additional clinical effects such as oxygen deprivation? So is there a clinical impact through not getting enough oxygen in the system, for example? So, is apnea dangerous because of the loss of sleep, or because there are other clinical impacts?
Yeah, look, again, excellent question, and the answer is both. There are very nice studies where they've teased those pieces of the story apart, and yes, the oxygen deprivation or hypoxia, the repetitive hypoxia that people with sleep apnea get, and now it varies between, people get different severities of sleep apnea. Some people might be experiencing what we refer to as mild, so 10 or 15 or 20 events per hour, so brief stoppages per hour, whereas others it's up to 100 times per hour or more. And with that, their level of oxygen deprivation or hypoxia varies dramatically. So yes, the low oxygen levels in themselves can place stress on on all of our body functions. In fact, all our organs can experience impairment after hypoxia, and the cardiovascular and the metabolic system are certainly too. Now, but equally, the disrupted sleep that is also, when you're having one of these apnea events, you wake up, you have one of those arousals, brief awakenings, and so it will disrupt sleep, stops you from getting into deeper sleep. If you've got very severe sleep apnea, you might have very little or no rapid eye movement sleep, so it disrupts the quality of sleep as well. So those things together can lead to, quite profound adverse health consequences.
We had a question from Judith who asks, is amitriptyline suitable for elderly people to take as a sleeping aid? And she puts in brackets, I'm getting into my 70s and I still find it useful. So, I think there's possibly a little safety question or a usage question there. Are there age effects that people should take into consideration when they're looking at medications that may affect their sleep?
Yeah, look, any medications, whether it be over the counter or prescribed, should be discussed with your doctor. But and that's not one that we've studied here. So I won't comment on the evidence side of that. What I will say about aging and sleep, as I alluded to in some of the slides, is yes, it's quite normal for us to get less deep sleep as we age now, and to have more of those periods where we do have, awakenings throughout the night. Perfectly natural, normal. Now, particularly, as in the retiree stage, naps can also start to affect sleep. So with more time about, now it depends on your circumstances. Many retirees are incredibly busy people and living very full lives, and don't necessarily have extra time, but many will. And if they're napping during the day, then that starts to impair the nighttime sleep. So, you hear these common stories like I'm waking up at 4 a.m. And so on and so forth, but it's about looking at those other things that I mentioned that might be actually causes of disrupted sleep. So hopefully that answers it. Yes, it changes as we get older, but there are other things we can do to still maintain optimal sleep throughout life.
I think we have time for just one more question, and that is, if someone's a shift worker where the disruption is known and predictable, are there things that can be done to mitigate the deleterious effects? And are there new, I'm not quite sure about this word, I think they mean are there new devices or new innovations potentially that might assist people who are shift workers and know that they're going to potentially face disrupted sleep?
Yeah, look, really good question, and we run a sleep research program, and so our team and I've certainly done many nights over my life, and it's about reinforcing the things that I spoke about, and more so for the shift worker, because you have to sleep during the day where it's light outside, it might be noisy, so you've got to, I always used to sleep with earplugs, eye mask, make sure the room was dark, try and establish those routines to still get enough sleep when you are shift work, doing shift work. Now, for prolonged overnight shifts, those brief naps and can actually be quite useful at restoring alertness if that's an option. Otherwise, we're learning more and more about the types of food you eat to optimize performance, and alertness throughout the night can be helpful and in terms of maintaining productivity and alertness. So There's I guess a few general tips, but really, it is something that is a challenge, and it's really still trying to prioritize enough time and working with your body clock as best you can to get back on track within your regular cycle, sleep-wake cycle, when you're sort of bouncing between shifts as best you can.
That's great. Look, thank you, Danny. We've had incredible interest and participation in today's event. We've now come to time, so I think that was a really well-rounded discussion. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us, so thank you for your questions and for your engagement. And I'd like to particularly thank Professor Danny Eckert for his expert insights. Now remember, you can watch this session again on Flinders' YouTube channel or Flinders University's Brave webpage, where you can also register to receive notifications of our future events. So thank you once again, and good afternoon.